ravi usukarovarejanam varijo tale kintu ogamokata umbatu paripandati dam cittam maradeyam patari. Dear brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, I'm very happy to be with you today in this morning. So sharing Dhamma, which delivered by the Buddha and his disciples, according to Buddhist tradition, when we listen to Dhamma, we need to pay total attention to the Dhamma, that what we are hearing. If our mind is not with the moment, in the present moment, then we are unable to understand the Dhamma. So therefore, first thing that you all need to do, you need to bring your attention to the present moment. In this very pleasant time, pleasant moment, pleasant morning, you can imagine your mind is free from all anger, hatred, and delusion. And your dedication and your effort that putting here to learn and follow the teachings of the Lord Buddha. The Buddha is the teacher, the founder of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is his teaching. The Sangha is his disciples. So these three triple gems, we call triple gems, the Sarana, are our refuge. So we always go to refuge, Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So once we are following triple gem, we can get success, happiness, and protection. So therefore, today, please be happy for getting to and following the Buddha Dhamma. So what we are going to pay attention today is about mental habit, mental attitudes, the culture of mind. This is very important for us as a human being. If we are not cultivate our mind, if we do not understand our mental habit, mental attitudes, we are in danger. Why? Because mind makes everything towards goodness or badness. If we do not make our mind control, or if we do not understand mental attitudes, mental behavior, we are in danger. But if we understand these mental attitudes, we are always in a safer place, and we don't have to worry, we don't have to get upset, we can overcome many things, whatever coming from the world, even coming from ourselves, from the family, even politically, whatever happening. So we can be straightforward and we can be stronger because of understanding this nature of mind. So therefore, what is the mind? How we understand? We must pay our attention Because if our mind is not training well, then that mind can be the worst and the worst criminalist in the world. If we develop into the highest level, we can be the best in the world, like Buddha. So therefore, what we need to do, we need to understand the mental habits. So mind is not staying in one place or a single place. Mind always running here and there. That is first thing that we should understand. This mind is not staying in one single place. The mind is wandering, running here and there. It is very difficult to tame, very difficult to keep in one place, very difficult to focus at the moment, at the present moment. So therefore, we need some training. We need to understand these attitudes, behavior. Then we are able to control it, tame it, and then we can do things well. So what's the habits of the mind? Pandanam chapalan chittang. This mind is flickering all the time. This mind is very difficult to guard. Durakkam dunnivaryam. It is very difficult to guard, very difficult to control, very difficult to keep in one place. That Buddha said, Durakkam dunnivaryam. It is difficult to guard. Ujum karot medavi. Wise person. Wise person, medavi means the wise person. Wise person straight this mind. The simile that Buddha gave, like a fish that is drawn from its watery, and a boat and thrown upon land. So, if our mind is not protected well, it is fluttering, it is struggling, and when the fish bring to the out from the water, the fish is fluttering. Our mind is similar to that. So, when we protect and control our mind, and it is the passion, and then it is staying and calming down and relaxing. So, the flickering mind always brings us harmfulness and making us in troubles, putting us into trouble. So therefore, this is very difficult to guard. Very difficult to guard. Durakkam dunnivaryam. Very difficult to guard. Why? Because we all know that we have six sense, we call six sense bases. These six sense bases always acquiring external sceneries, hearings, taste and touch, and all these acquiring from external world. And then keeping copies of each and every scene, each and every taste, and each and every touch. So keeping that copies in the mind, subconscious mind, that makes us uncomfortable. Why? Because these things is staying in the mind, and those become like a tar type of very thick layer of thoughts, the word that we can say for those defilements gathering in the mind and staying and making concept, making ideas, generating ideas and generating thoughts. If the mind is filled with these defilements, whatever we think, those thoughts are not wholesome thoughts. Those are all unwholesome thoughts. So unwholesome thoughts, or akusala, which makes us in great danger, putting us into danger, putting others into danger, making others in troubles. Why? All thoughts that come from this polluted mind are not wholesome thoughts. If wholesome thoughts, if unwholesome thoughts affected into mind, then all thoughts that generating actions from mind, body, and words. These three ways that people are making things, active, doing things, doing good things, wrong things, bad things, and all these happening through these three doors. We call three doors. Dwara. Doors mean that things going in and out. The place that we are going in and out, entering in and out. So these three places are the mostly extending attitudes, good attitudes, bad attitudes, good karma, bad action, and all these happening through these three places. So, if mind affected with unwholesome thoughts, those actions always unwholesome, and all actions are evil actions. All thoughts are evil actions. All thoughts are all evil thoughts. All words are unwholesome and dirty words. All body actions are unwholesome actions and criminal attitudes, criminal actions. Coming from where? Unwholesome thoughts affected the mind, and then all these coming from there. So therefore, we should understand this situation, this nature, then we can be a better person, we can be a calm person, and we can always be such a good human being, good citizen, because of we understand these mental attitudes. Then we try to protect our mind from going to danger, doing some wrong actions. So therefore, we all need to understand the Buddhism as a not just only doing worshipping and praying and all other actions, but more than those, what we need to understand, the Buddhism is just to create a better person, create a better family, and create a calm person and happy person, and and going towards the better place, going towards the ultimate happy state, nirvana. So that is the goal. So therefore, what you are trying is to bringing all together and then extending harmony, extending peace, and having very humble life. So this is what we are all get together and then doing these type of meetings and following the Dhamma. So I wish you all good luck and happiness. May the triple gems with you all the time. May the triple gems overcome your problems, difficulties, and may the triple gems heal the wounds of the world people having. People, having a lot of problems because of religion, races, and then the culture, and sometimes various different attitudes and ideas. So therefore, let us extend our metta, our loving thoughts towards all living beings on this earth, even the other galaxy, wherever they are. May they all be well, happy, and peaceful. May they all attain ultimate happiness of the nirvana. And thank you. If you have any question, so we can spend some time.
Thank you, Bhante. That was a very good talk. Members, participants, if there are any which are not good thoughts, then what is the workaround for that? Because that does happen again and again. So how to work on that, Bhante?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So Bhante, the question is, as you said, like we have to train our mind, we have to make sure that we don't have unhealthy thoughts or unworthy thoughts. The question I'm asking is, if we get such thoughts, then what should we do? What should be our approach to it?
Okay, that's a very beautiful question, and that's the key. If so, that's going to be another big topic. If you ask that question. So once we get that kind of unwholesome thought, so how we treat at the moment to avoid that thought or let it go, that thoughts. So that is the most difficult thing. That's why Lord Buddha, he taught us very beautiful way, but it's very difficult. Why it is a beautiful way? Because we need to train our mind first in order to, whenever unwholesome thoughts arising in the mind at the moment, at that instant, we need to let it go. How we do that? We have to have a training. What we call for that training, we call it mindful training. So once we have enough training of our mind, then whenever that unwholesome, evil thoughts coming into mind, he knows at the moment this is unwholesome thoughts, this is unhealthy thought, this is not right thought, this is not good, I should let it go at this moment, right away. So only people who do mindful meditation and have enough training, that person can do it. Otherwise, whenever the thoughts arising in the mind, then he react according to that thoughts. That can be unwholesome action, because unwholesome thoughts doesn't make wholesome action. Unwholesome thoughts generating unwholesome action. Wholesome thoughts generating wholesome action. So therefore, we have to be very careful whenever unwholesome thoughts is arising. We need to know at the moment, so we have to have enough mental training, mindful training in order to avoid it. For example, when you get angry, then you react. Whatever you get to your hand and throw into someone, and then saying some bad words and harsh words. And then even he's generating more anger in the mind. So he's kicking by hands and legs. And sometimes if he has a gun and then he get that gun and shoot, maybe later he regret. But at that instant, he got this much fresher energy that I must react. So if it is wholesome action, we don't have to worry, we don't have to let it go, because it is good thing. So we need to do it, because wholesome thoughts always bring us happiness, success, and benefits, and also to others. For example, if you save an animal, so the thoughts come to your mind, so this animal is here, so I need to save him. So you save it, and then somebody get benefit, the animal got protection, and also you can be happy of saving the animal. So, but once we do some unwholesome action, for just like a killing animal, instead of saving him, protecting him, then later on maybe regret, but sometime maybe not. It depends. But anyway, what he has done is just unwholesome action, taking a living being's life. So therefore, at that instant, whenever the anger arising in the mind, at that instant we need to have a very sharp training in order to analyze that anger and then let it go at the moment, right away, without lifting our hands and legs and taking weapons and rocks and all types of dangerous weapons. Without touching them, we can treat at the moment, at the time of arising. This can be in few seconds. So therefore, in order to make that thoughts let it go or neutral, we need to have a very sharp, very sharp mindfulness.
Thank you, Bhante. Definitely, like in future sessions, we would like to understand and learn how to practice mindfulness. Thanks again for the detailed explanation. Any other members, if there are any questions, please spell out. Okay, Vijayji, please go ahead. I have unmuted you.
Bhante Vajravadi, Namo. Quick question is a little different. For countries, military, military force, it works for protecting country. How mindfulness or training or controlling mind be beneficial for them?
So you mean
because they have to bring that unwholesome thought while fighting. So just how with this question.
well, our countries always not fighting, and then even soldiers not always they are fighting, and then whenever the few countries the fight can be happen, and not all the time, not everywhere, not all the time. That and also not a majority of they are doing it. So only selected people they are protecting country. For example, like joining the army, navy, and it is just selected people, but not everybody. So according to their karmic, previous karmic pause, and then they join it, and then they do it again, and then they are involving with that, but it's not applied to everybody. And the thing is that becoming to a soldier, it is kind of a job that is joining. But anyway, that whenever uh, whenever the enemies come, then he need to shoot them or arrest them or whatever the actions that are coming, the orders coming from the head, then they have to follow. So that's obeying rules and their army navy laws. So for them, it is difficult. But if every individual, if they, for very simple way to overcome those things, we don't need soldiers, we don't need guards, we don't need protectors. If all the people in the world, if they are following 5 precepts, we don't need army, navy. We don't need to protect anyone. Why? Because each and everyone following principles. They are not following those principles, then people looking for the way to protect them, protect their country. And for them, it's very difficult to be mindful, very difficult to away from generating unwholesome thoughts. Somebody is coming in front of the soldier, and then he get angry and he get fear, and then he shoot. So that is what happening. And so it is unfortunate situation that if any country having a war, is unfortunate situation. It is unfortunate for the soldiers, unfortunate for the leaders, and also unfortunate for the people who are living in that country. Why? Because they always in fear, and always they are in worries, and so therefore we need to minimize the problems. If all the people in the world following 5 precepts, we don't have these issues. You don't have to ask these questions. Why? Because they all are protecting them and protecting others. If you protect yourself, and then you are protecting others. So you're protecting, we respect other living beings, then we don't care. And we don't take anything from others. And then we are not doing any sexual misconduct. So there's no problem in the world. And they're not lying, and they're not taking intoxicated alcohol. So why these things are happening? Because of greediness, craving, sensuality, and all these attitudes and mental behavior creating those problems. So, we cannot, it is a good question. But only thing is, this is limited people and limited places having those things, but not to majority. So if we are not armies as a soldiers and leading the people, and then as long as we are having like yourself and having your family and and peacefulness and harmony in your family, and then you need to be yourself according to what Buddha said. And otherwise, if we looking at in wide range, it is sad because many people having troubles in the world today.
Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Vijayji, do you have any follow-up question?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
So we are almost, it's almost 10:45 now, halfway done. So if there are any quick question, one last question, we can take that. Otherwise, we can move to our next speaker. Is there any other question? Okay. So thank you, Vajra, Bodhi, Bhante, for coming, for joining, and for giving us a good Dhamma talk on state of mind. We look forward to hear you again in future, Bhante.
All the best and good wishes to all of you. May you all be well and happy.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, Bhante. Okay, we'll move to our next speaker now. Today's speaker, let's first, Mosi, are you able to hear me? Let's first check your audio and video, and then I'll introduce you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, we can see you now. Let me do a quick introduction. Everyone knows you by default, I believe, but still, just to refresh, Tenmozi Sundarajan, and she herself calls her Dalit Diva, and she is a filmmaker and transmedia artist by profession, and she believes that story is the most important unit of social change. Or to present or to bring a social change, story is the best way to bring everyone to understand what the issue is and explain them. She has also set up an international women's media technology. I don't know, it's a forum, a company, but it's called Third World Majority. And today she is going to speak on history of caste in the US, and she is also going to explain the strategies for breaking the silence on this issue. It's definitely a joy and pleasure to hear Tenmozi. Tenmozi, please go ahead.
Okay. Jai Bhim, everybody. Good morning.
Jai Bhim.
Everybody's
so a lot of users are on mute, and we will make them unmute during question answer session.
Okay, got it. Well, it's really a pleasure to be with you guys this morning, and for me, I think one of the things that's really critical, and I'm glad that you brought that up out of my bio, Sandeep, is that I really do believe that story is the most important unit of social change. And I think it's because through stories we know ourselves, we come to know each other, and create a shared vision of the world that we want to build towards. And I think that that is one of the main reasons why we have so much unrest around the issue of caste, because the Dalit story and the Dalit experience has not been integrated within the conversation of the many South Asian diasporas and within our home countries. So unless we know exactly what it is we have suffered, how are they going to actually know the scope and the scale of the problem? So for me, I was a Dalit born here in the United States. I started with actually where my life trajectory began, and that was my entry back into activism back in India. But, you know, when I started, and I'm sure this is many of your experiences here in the U.S., is that most people who learn of the Indian community or who are part of any of the South Asian communities will say caste doesn't exist here in America. And I knew that was completely inaccurate, because even from when we were growing up, and my family came in the immigration wave in the 70s, my family passed. And that was the only way to survive within the Tamil diaspora, because there was no tolerance for anyone that was Dalit, and that was very, very clear. So I think that that experience of passing and also having like utensils taken, and from me, like from another adult who found out I was untouchable, made me realize that I needed to know more about the history of caste and know about it specifically here in the U.S. And so I don't know how many people know about it, but my experience whenever I talk to other Dalits, they're shocked about how long it has defined our experience here in the U.S. So I think with that, I'll go right into the PowerPoint so that we can kind of look at the same content. So here we go. So this PowerPoint was something that I developed to be able to get many South Asians to start talking and breaking the silence about this issue. And usually when you talk about the issue of caste with people that aren't Dalits, with Savarnas or other folks, it's always that uncomfortable conversation, kind of like when you talk about race, for example. You know, people don't want to admit their privilege. People don't want to talk about something that might make another person uncomfortable, and so they don't talk about it at all. So my sense is that if you're thinking about starting to have this conversation in the other circles that you're a part of, I think one thing, you know, particularly from like a Buddhist perspective, is to open the conversation with compassion, because we know that this is probably one of the biggest wastes of human capital in our country. But everyone that is involved, and which is everyone who is from any of these cultures, in order to let it go, we all have to be able to have the grace to let it go. So I start the conversation with the idea that it's a safe place, people can make mistakes, and that we have to have compassion in that conversation. The next thing that I try to do is to ask people to have a shared definition of caste. And usually they'll land upon something like, you know, caste is a social category. It weaves like race, class, and faith into a fatal noose like trapping the 300 million Dalits that exist in India alone. But you can find other definitions that might work for you based on what you know about the group that you're sharing with. But I think it's important to get people to understand and have a shared definition before you start kind of breaking down into history and also creating the safe space to talk about it. The next thing is I use this like pyramid, and this was something that both Asha and I developed as we were doing the report backs from the Dalit Women's Self-Respect Yatra, was that we needed to, one, be able to explain the different categories like Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and where Dalits fit into that pyramid, but then also get people to think beyond the fact that, oh, well, I'm not a Brahmin, so I'm not part of keeping the caste system. Well, part of the reason why people think about that is they think of the system of oppression that is caste as only interpersonal. But one key component, I think, to eradicating caste is getting people to think out of the box and really look and understand how systems of oppression work. And the way that they fundamentally work is that all systems of oppression have both structural, interpersonal, and internal manifestations. So someone may very well have eradicated the sense of their own caste on the inside, but there are still policies that are casteist in nature that are affecting the whole of society. And so when you look at the breakdown of this pyramid, you see Brahmins and the dominant castes are only a portion of this pyramid, and the Shudras and the Dalits make up the base, you know, because this is a pyramid related to population. But the inverse pyramid, which shows the concentration of knowledge, the concentration of resources, capital, and land, is disproportionate. So that the people at the top have the most of those items, while the people at the bottom have very little access or control or agency around those issues. And that's exactly the way that we can start talking about the issue of caste in terms of its annihilation. Is that, you know, you can be against the caste system and not against an individual. And so I feel like this allows an entry point for everyone to be engaged in the eradication of caste, while also making it become a safe space for them to acknowledge their privilege. Another piece that I think is really important to kind of talk about with people is, well, what is at stake? Because a lot of people, when you first start talking about the ending of caste, to them it sounds like you're attacking their tradition, or they're attacking their religious practice, which in some cases is true, you know, especially if they're, you know, given that we have the BJP in power in India currently. But I think the thing is to look at, is to kind of stay rational and stay with the statistics, because the data doesn't lie. And as irrational as, you know, someone might be in this conversation, we get our grounding and our moral upper ground from the data. And so, you know, this is this one stat where every hour 3 Dalits are murdered, 2 are raped, and 1 houses are burnt, is a statistic that has been around since 2002 or 2004, and the numbers have gotten worse. So in a country that says that it is the world's largest democracy, you do not have numbers of that level and that scale and that scope of atrocity. You just don't. So very quickly you start to see that if we really want the India that is represented by the idea that it is the world's largest democracy, we have to end this violence. You know, and when you look at the issue of caste-based sexual violence, of the 80 million Dalit women that have been reported in the census, 67% have experienced some form of sexual violence. That's 2/3 of our women who have been facing with these issues. That's not a just society. So at a level of like Indian pride, especially today being like Indian independence, you know, we can talk about the fact that if we want a modern India, we do not want these. We do not want this thing. But on an economic level, which is I think most people kind of respond to the pocket, in India, a nation of 1.2 billion people, India's top richest people own 1/4 of the GDP. And that 1/4 of the GDP, those top richest people, they're the top 100 people. And of those, that 100, 100% of them are all upper caste. Meanwhile, 800 million people live for under 40 rupees a day. So when you look at the entire economic picture and you start to break apart the GDP, you see how unstable of a country India is with this like gross inequity in place. So to eradicate caste is to actually ensure a stable future for India. And I think that's the way that we frame it. You know, because if the moral argument is not the way that it's going to go, then let's just take the economic one, because I think people, the people who aren't motivated by their higher selves will at least be motivated by their pocketbook. So then I think the other kind of thing that I like to do is to ask, what would it take to eradicate caste in our lifetime? Because whenever there is the sense of when you start to break the silence about caste, people just get this, like, their body language has changed, they like look down, or they just like, well, it's always been there, it's always going to be there. I think that if we take that self-defeatist attitude from the beginning, then we've already kind of shot ourselves in the foot. I think we have to be ambitious, and I think we have to dream as wide as we can, because frankly, we're ambitious about so many other things. We build companies, we put men on the moon. Why can't we take out this system that is destroying the very fabric of our country? So I think we demand from the beginning this ambitious vision that we are all living our lives as if we are going to be able to eradicate caste in our lifetime. And if we live with that like daring ambition, think how far we would move Ambedkar's Karva in our lifetime. I think that's how we kind of change this conversation and the dynamic. So another piece I think that's really important to assert, like when having this conversation with people, is that everywhere Desis are, caste exists. There's not a single basic community around the world that has left South Asia that has not replicated caste structures. And that research and that those stories are coming out every day. But I think Dalits are a testament to that, because everywhere Dalits are, you hear stories of caste discrimination, the needing, being like locked out of like religious institutions, and having to pass and hide because of the replication of caste institutions. So we just have to assert this so that we can then start to unpack what our histories are. So with caste in the United States, you know, I like to kind of start that with the very first Indian that came, caste was asserted in his description. So the first Indian that was documented in American history came through the East India Marine Society in Massachusetts, and he was a crew member of one of the colonial crews that had come through. And so one of the reverends that was servicing that ship wrote in his diary in 1799 that when he met this native Indian from Madras, that he was of dark complexion, long black hair, soft countenance, tall and well proportioned, and he is said to be darker of Indians in general of his own caste. So even from that first description, this Indian, when he was identifying himself to the Reverend, spoke of his caste and his color and his complexion. And this is the first known written description of us in this country. So it's there, it's embedded, it's part of the DNA of our communities that we've been here. It's also been part of our legal histories, and I'm bringing up this like newspaper headlines that came from the turn of the century, and it spoke of this unique case that began the wave of challenges to Indian citizenship that began with A.Z. Mozumdar. And just for people that aren't familiar, what happened is that there was a great deal of consternation when other immigrants in the 1800s started to clamor to be able to get citizenship. And at the time, the way that kind of like the whites only club in the U.S. Set up their ideas for segregation was that only people who were of white background could be eligible for citizens. So A.Z. Mozumdar, who is this fellow right here that you see this headline from, he issued the first successful challenge to that, arguing that he was, in fact, of a high caste Hindu pureblood belonging to the warrior caste. And as a result, he identified as Aryan and considered himself the brown Aryans of India, and therefore would be considered Caucasian if a brown Caucasian. And what was very interesting is that he won his case and he won his citizenship. And then another Sikh gentleman from the West Coast who tried to use the same thing was actually turned down by the Supreme Court. But this is the first legal entry related to our community, and it was all about who was considered, all related to caste and color, and therefore the appropriateness of us to be peers with white Americans here in the U.S. So it's very troublesome, and it's an unknown history, but it goes once again to understanding how do we see and understand caste as being embedded into the DNA of the institutions we're struggling with and are a part of here in the U.S. I think that, you know, switching to kind of modern times, caste continues in a lot of really interesting ways. Like when we think about, like, you know, a lot of South Asian American rappers or South Asian diasporic rappers from London, most of whom are Punjabi, there's like so many lyrics that they write about where they rap about being Jat. And when you talk to them, and I know a couple of them because I grew up in that generation, you know, they think what they're doing is that they're basically having an outlet to have some sort of safe identification separate from white racist culture. You know, so for them it's a relief to say, but at least, you know, I can say, you know, just like black folks come together and say they're from Compton, I can say I'm Jat. You know, and you know, and they'll like especially like in Southern California, they'll have these huge parties in parking lots, and they'll be doing card tricks and you know, and having like hip hop ciphers, and and this is a thing for them, without any acknowledgement or understanding the violence Jat communities have done to those in the lower caste in North India. And so there's this very strange disconnect of upper caste second generation children, because their parents are giving them caste culture without naming it as caste culture. And for them, and then these Indians then going on building and recreating social networks without acknowledging the pain of that privilege and the structural violent cost of those privileges. So this is why I like to talk about this in the context of history and in the forward position of movement, because if we don't actually start to challenge these things, we are going to be up against an ignorant upper caste majority that has a lot of economic power both abroad and in India. And in fact, this is part of the mechanism and the structure that brought Modi into power. So as Dalits and people who are aligned with Dalits, we need to now start setting up a counter pole to this experience so that we can take back some of that conversation and create a secular space for resistance and future kind of visioning. You know, this is we all know these marriage sites, but I think it's really interesting for folks that are second generation like myself, is that when you look at the marriage classifieds and the fact that people are identifying and wanting to seek matches within caste and are doing it even in second generation spaces, people aren't questioning that this is a problem, that this is actually part of the thing that is continuing caste. And so I just bring this up for lots of different people to rethink their choices around this and also start to begin to speak out about it, as difficult as it might be. And then this is I think the other thing to kind of recognize is that there's also been a strong history of resistance to caste in the diaspora. And one of the big moments that people look at as a big historical moment for that was the California textbook campaign in the late 90s, early 2000s, where basically the Hindu American Foundation used the framework of multiculturalism to challenge the California textbook committee on several precepts around Hinduism that was written. And the California textbook had said Hinduism was a patriarchal culture and established the caste system in India. And they wanted to fight that and say, that it wasn't patriarchal and that the caste did not exist with Hinduism. And it was inaccurate, and the fact that they used multiculturalism was even more heinous. And so it began this large global struggle centered on these textbooks that was led by Dalits, the Ravidasis in that region, as well as other solidarity groups and academics from over 100 institutions around the world. But what's really interesting is that in this story of this battle, the fact that Dalits were the first people to resist was completely erased. So this is the danger of us not coming out, is that if we are silent, that silence breeds more violence, but we are not seen as agents of our own destiny and history, when in fact we are actually creating the very factors of history through our resistance. And so it is so vital for us to document, share our stories, and be out in a way that we can start setting these poles. Another big campaign, which I know different folks in the ANA community are aware of, is the caste and discrimination study that happened in the UK that eventually led to the current battle to pass the first anti-caste discrimination piece of legislation outside of India. And this was a really interesting study because what it did is that they basically had groups of people that would come. So I think they did 7 focus groups that were anchored by the Ravidasi and the Ambedkar centers in these communities. And they had Dalits self-identify and talk about the kinds of discrimination that they faced. And they had people who were assaulted. They had violence on the assembly line. They had cars that were set on fire. And they had general kind of job discrimination. So because they got that both quantitative and qualitative story, they were able to present from this data a very strong argument for this legislation, and which is why it got so far as it has. And, you know, unfortunately now they're in the battle of their lives around this piece of legislation because the Hindu fundamentalists are trying to tank it even as it's been passed. They're trying to stop it at the implementation level. But I feel like this is actually the next phase for our work here in the United States. In addition to us doing the individual organizing work that we do to support our communities and our causes in India, I think we need to now organize past our immediate religious and cultural affiliations to, one, get a sense of the scope and the scale of our experience here in the diaspora currently, and also start to get stories of discrimination, organizing wins, and our history. Because if we can state who we are and what we're doing and how we're engaged, we can then find a platform for engagement, and that I think can lead to change not only here, but most importantly, change for our communities in South Asia. So I think with that, I'll open it up to questions. Oh, before I do that, sorry, sorry, I forgot I had 2 more slides. So this is another thing that I use with like Savarna folks, is to actually have them go through these talking points to look at their privilege. Because a lot of times when you first have that conversation with Savarna individuals, they kind of shut down because they don't have handles into this place that has been wordless for them. So the first thing that I talk to them about is the fact that South Asian identity is a social construct. And what that means is that South Asian as a category was made in the framework in diasporic countries like the UK, in the US, as a way to racialize what is actually a very diverse and competing set of identities back in our home countries. And those competing identities have hierarchies, have histories of pain and tension, and that just because we all like come together as South Asian doesn't mean that those pains and those tensions don't exist. So both can be there, and we have to be clear about that in order to be able to tease apart what exactly is happening. 2, a lot of times people will say, well, I don't perpetuate the caste system because I'm poor, or, you know, I identify as being working class, or that class like somehow trumps caste in some other situation. And I think by saying that they're separate things that can have overlap, it allows openings for people to recognize, well, maybe my parents were poor immigrants here, but they were still like upper caste and carried some of that upper caste privilege in the communities that they then started to engage with. So I think that that's kind of like a false straw man argument and shouldn't be perpetuated. Similarly, a lot of people will say, well, because I'm not Brahmin, I'm not perpetuating caste privilege. Well, as we all know, in India, some of the worst perpetrators of violence are not Brahmins. It's actually those are the dominant castes and the OBCs. So here to working with those that are second generation or folks that have immigrated here, it's really important to reiterate this, because if they don't understand that they are part of investing in the cycle of privilege that is within the caste system, we're not going to be able to break through. The second thing is asking folks to listen and not dismiss from wherever they are in their perspective in that process, because I think that there's so much pain and so much awkwardness in talking about these issues that people tend to right away want to dismiss someone bringing up a point around caste privilege just so that it stops the discomfort. But discomfort is an opening to so much learning, and so I think encouraging people to feel uncomfortable about it without shutting up the messenger is a big part of that. And then I think finally, asking people not to rep their privilege or appropriate as part of their identity. And repping privilege means, like, I think we all hear it, like, you know, sometimes at work you'll hear people that are part of, like, you know, forward caste communities who, you know, are talking about, like, the greatness about being able to come and connect and whatever. So just asking them not to do that, and because that just replicates privilege. or appropriate. Like there's this one really famous South Asian artist who got earring piercings on both the sides of her nose because she said, I wanted to be low caste and be in solidarity with the low caste, so I got those piercings to be that, which made no sense. But this woman got like a lot of money and was also very was applauded by her other upper caste colleagues for being in this way, you know. So and then finally, like these may seem very like basic and obvious to those of us who are Dalits, but to upper caste people who have been growing up with privilege here, they don't realize that these are all caste markers and things that are caste locators. So by forcing them and asking them these questions, it all of a sudden makes them then be able to ask their family members or their places where they're from what their then social privilege is. So it's shocking, you know, because obviously as Dalits, we are always conscious and aware and have been defined by these questions. But to push these questions back out to Savarna individuals then starts to make visible their privilege and what then can be moved and challenged within their own networks. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or just dialogue because, you know, I'm really interested in kind of hearing what folks think and want to collaborate and talk about.
Thank you. Thanks again. Let's open the forum for question and answer sessions, and we also have a chat window. If anyone wants to write a question over there, or please pick up. Okay. Vinaya, do you have a question?
Yes, yes.
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes. Hi, Vinaya. Good morning, JB.
Good morning, JB. Tenmuri, thank you so much for that wonderful talk this morning. Tenmuri, I would definitely like to hear your thoughts on how do we engage our young generation here, okay, and especially women. We want to inspire them to get connected with the mission. And, you know, so just want to hear your thoughts that what could we do to bring our ladies and our people in general into the mission.
So my feeling, and I'm just going off of like my own personal experience, is that I think for young people and also for women, I think we need to have separate spaces that allows them to feel safe to come out and build their leadership in that environment, and then have an integrated space. And I'm saying that because, you know, when I was like first coming up as like a Dalit organizer, I was the only woman and the only young person in like a room full of uncles for a very long time. And, you know, most of the other people who were my peers, they would get really bored with the conversation because they didn't feel like they had a place to come into the conversation, and they didn't have enough knowledge, and they felt like they were uneducated in the topic, so they didn't feel like they had a stake, you know. So, but like for example, this workshop this presentation was actually done to a group called BASE, the Bay Area. I don't know what the SS stands for, but it's basically a youth leadership camp which brings together young people from 15 to 22 for a weekend of introduction to community organizing concepts, the political history of South Asian American history, and then also tools for understanding their experience and their identity. And my feeling is that with young Dalits like myself, you know, and many of your children who they will become, is that they're up against integrating and working with other Desis who have the opportunity to go to Hindu camp or, you know, other kind of like casteist institutions where they get a strong sense of their cultural identity. But it's very isolating when you're Dalit and growing up because you don't have those same resources. And, you know, for you guys in Anna, you guys have this very strong Buddhist network. But other Dalits who aren't Buddhists, who are from other linguistic communities, if they don't have, like both the Ravadasis and the Buddhists, you guys have those networks. But for Dalits that are from other sectors, they don't have that. And most of those Dalits then choose to pass or are very, very isolated. So my feeling is that I think it needs to be 2 steps. One, I think we absolutely this year need to launch a survey so we can get a sense of where the concentration of Dalits are, what are the kinds of stories and discriminations people are facing, and what are the histories people have been organizing, small and large, in their communities. 2, I think it would be really worthwhile to try to work together to do a Dalit youth camp or a Dalit women's camp sometime next year to be able to see if we can build leadership towards that. And the first time you do something like that, like it's always a little rickety, and you're always like, is this working? Are we doing it right? And then the next year, you're completely confident, yes, we're doing it right, because you've gone from 5 to like 15. And I think it's just that we need to believe that we are worthwhile to invest in, and that we, in fact, have the capacity and the beauty and the strength and the vision to be able to grow to that. And so I think that's what I would put forth, Vinaya.
Okay, thank you, Tenmuri. Tenmuri, just one more comment. See, whenever we make these presentations and whenever we write articles, we tend to refer to these perpetrators class as upper caste or savarnas. I would say that when we are talking about this in a broader context, we'll have to change the connotations itself. So, for example, in this case, what I would say is we should start calling these guys as a perpetrators class, or for that matter, even orthodox class. So unless and until we ourselves start changing the connotations, it is not going to change. So that was just a recommendation, because a lot of times I see that we find it very difficult to even establish our identity and even their identity, and we tend to call upper caste, because that's how the structure works. But I think in the new era, we'll have to change that connotation. Okay, we'll have to make sure that we call them perpetrators class, we call them orthodox class. And then people will associate, yes, they are doing something bad, and that's the reason people should be supporting the other castes who have been, against orthodoxy, who have been the propagators of equality, liberty, and all those, good aspects of life. So I think that will be very important, just a feedback that I wanted to give it to you.
No, I think the question of terminology is really important, and I'm glad you brought it up. I feel really torn about it, because what I do is I take my lead from the other Dalit academics that I've been reading and working with online, and they use the term Savarna because they're trying to put attention on the people who are upper caste without using the term upper caste, right? And then I've also heard the term dominant caste, and so a lot of times, like, I'll go between 3, because in the U.S., all of those people who are members of those castes don't even recognize that they have that privilege. So it's kind of trying to find a word to name that privilege without, like, isolating one caste. Because when you isolate just one caste, then everybody else who's not that caste then says, oh, okay, that's not me, So it's getting to that point. But I also hear what you're saying about saying just call it perpetrator caste. But I think perpetrator caste doesn't get quite to the acknowledgement of the violence that's embedded in the caste hierarchy. So what we may have to do is just always acknowledge is that the vocabulary is imperfect, because it's really, part of this new age, as you mentioned, is that we're finally able to be concentrated in our power across borders and across language and religious differences to say, whoever you guys are, this is unacceptable, and it's a human rights crisis that needs to end in our lifetime. So stop it, No,
agreed. Totally agree. And when we are talking to Indians, it is very obvious, right? We don't even have to explain. But when we are talking in the international communities, I think it is all the more important that we use these kind of words so that they understand that what these castes have been doing for ages. And that's the only thing, because typically I wouldn't like to call myself as a Dalit, right? Or if that means broken people, I would rather call myself as a Buddhist because that's what the identity that Baba Sahib gave us after studying for so long into religion, and he went into all kind of studies, right? What's the solution for my people? He went into political way, economic way, and then finally he took refuge in religion as a final solution to Hinduism. So I would say that it will be, I know you're talking about there are various Dalit communities who are still not into Buddhism fold, but I think that is another effort that we'll have to assert ourselves, our efforts on, whereby we bring them into the fold of that, and bring that that culture of compassion, harmony, fraternity. I think that will be important eventually.
Okay.
Big topic, never-ending topic.
Good discussion going around, and thanks Vinaya for bringing up that. I agree to greater extent, like at least the word upper caste, and I'm more aligned to upper. Maybe like we can reword it or re-emphasize that even though we term it as upper caste, it means the perpetuator or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Tenmari, do you have to kind of any specific points you have to highlight to the comment what Vinaya said, or we can move to the next question?
No, I think they're great points, and I think they're what we need to keep talking about. So I'm in agreement. Let's go to the next question.
Okay. Mr. Dala, do you have any question?
Yeah, one thing related to religion, like Buddhism, those who can believe, they can believe. How about those who cannot believe in God? So we cannot pitch for a Buddhism. See, those days when Ambedkar was fighting for this, in that situation, Buddhism was he find as a suitable one. But now people have the freedom, whatever they want to think they can be a Dalit, So pitching for the Buddhism, like wishing all people should come to Buddhism, it's little bit as a Dalit we think that we should be treated equal. The same way the other person, there may be some person we don't believe in God, still he is a Dalit. He can fight for that cause, So pitching for that, like wishing all should come to Buddhism is a little bit like, hello?
No, we're listening.
Mr. Dala, please continue. Very good points you are highlighting. Go ahead.
Because, see, in Christian, there are Dalits. See, when we organized in Washington, D.C., every people came, we all together as a Dalit, not as a Buddhist. There may be, we should respect each individual, He may be misguided, but that's his wish. So, the other thing, the definition of upper caste or thing, we cannot change that because we are fighting against Manu who has defined all these things. So unless if you try to use that upper, like perpetrator or other thing, then you are denying all those Manu things. So we are trying to show the world the Hindu religion is such a cruel one because it goes by the Manu, whatever laws written. So we have to definitely use that upper caste, Then only people will know how cruel is this Hinduism. But the moment you change the terminology, again people think that, okay, whatever Hindu law says, that may be the right. So we cannot rewrite the history or the definition. Like the suitable one is how she has showed the pyramid, the caste system, that will be there. That is how we have showed the world.
Well, and Bella, I think the thing that resonates with what both you and Vinaya said for me is that, I was not raised a Buddhist. I was raised both as a Christian and a Hindu because that's actually the reality of Dalits in Tamil Nadu. For Dalits and I think this is actually goes to like quite the poignant pain of who we are as Dalits is that, wherever we were geographically in India, determined the spread of the philosophy that was how our families found whatever small liberation or peace that we had. So some of us are Christians, some of us are Buddhists, some of us are Hindus, some of us are atheists. And what's so poignant to me about it is that for any other freaking people on the planet Earth, the choice of God is an existential one. They get to go outside, look at the stars at night, and think in their heart, what is it that I believe? Who do I belong to? What is my purpose and my place in the universe? But for Dalits, that was not a simple conversation of just existentialism. It was very much a place of pain, a place of survival, and a place of great turmoil to find dignity. And especially like, with my dad's story, for example, his family, it came down actually to brute survival, because the Christian missionaries from the CSI were the ones that actually built the well that allowed his village to finally have water. They were the ones that brought powdered milk, they brought powdered eggs, and they had access to food. So in those dire situations, the conversation about what God or what tradition, we're not at that place like the way other humans are, because of the brutality of this system. It has robbed us of the very human, journey to be able to place yourself in the universe. So knowing that that's the wound that many of us come out of, my sense is that as we build our movement, we have to be able to create a space where whatever choice people have made around their religious practice is respected and is separate from the journey for the justice to end this structural problem. And we can work together to share models that we find personally liberatory. Like, in the case of Buddhism, many Dalits, have found peace in that practice, and we can share that model. But I can tell you, knowing a lot of Dalit Christians, they also are quite passionate about how much they have found peace in their practice. But I think learning from each other's pain and where we found grace is the way that we can, start to then heal and reconnect. But I think that journey can be parallel to the political and secular process that needs to exist towards justice.
Very, very, very interesting. It's giving me a feeling that we are getting connected, and we are kind of like overlaying whatever the differences we are, and seeing at the path like how can we be together in respect of whatever our faiths are, but we are trying to be in one umbrella. Vinay wanted to react to what or had some comments on Bala's questions. Vinay, please go ahead.
Yeah. So see, what I was saying with Halaji was, I'm not saying that everybody should come into Buddhist fold. What I was trying to say is, as long as you are going to Hindu, people will ask you what is your caste. So I'm saying you have to get out of the Hindu fold. Okay. Now, personally, definitely, because I was raised as a Buddhist and I have done enough study on Buddhism and little bit of study on other religions also, I came to take refuge in Buddhism. Second part, no other religion except Hinduism talks about inequality, right? Be it Christianity, be it Buddhism, be it Islam, nobody talks about inequality. So we can be Christians, we can be any other religion which talks about equality. So, but unless if you are still trying to call yourself Hindu, good luck to you. You will be asked the caste and you will have to answer. So we are saying that if you want to come out of the caste fold, you have to embrace any other religion that you want to take yourself refuge in. That was my comment.
Vinayji, you're totally off the topic. What Tenmoli is saying, we're not ashamed of caste. If what you're trying to say, if I'm a Hindu, I'm going to be a caste. I'm proud to be Dalit, whether I'm a Buddhist or a Hindu, anything. So we have to come out and say I'm a Dalit, whether any caste. That's what we're talking about.
Are you a Hindu, or what are you saying? What is your religion?
No, I don't believe in God. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So do you think I believe in God as a Buddhist? I do not. Let's read the Buddhism first. Buddhism never believed in God.
Vinayji,
That's a different topic altogether that we're talking about.
We're not talking about the religion. We are here as a Dalit. That's what we're talking about.
Not really. Not really. Okay, so we can talk about it maybe offline. Okay.
But one thing that I think is
millions of people back in India who has brought up as a Christian and other things, so they're not respecting them.
No, did I not say that Christianity is, we can be Christian? Did I not say that? All I'm saying is we cannot be Hindus.
Who said Hindu? Who defines? Who has the authority? Who has the right to say who is Hindu, who is not Hindu? See, my mother used to pray in a brick and a neem tree. She never claimed as a Hindu. She prays to the whatever the farmland she has. She goes and pray. That's not a Hinduism. Who defines Hinduism?
Exactly.
Who follows the Manu thing? They're the Hindu. Nobody calls us a Hindu. Who has the right to call me as a Hindu? I can be what I want. I can pray whatever I want.
You have to define your own identity, and that's all I'm saying. As long as you are going to call yourself Hindu, you'll be asked your caste.
No.
Because Hindu and caste.
Why are you ashamed of caste? If they ask me my caste, I'll tell them I'm a Dalit. That's it.
Why should you? Because that was Dalit itself was a given identity to you. Somebody called you untouchable. Why would you accept that identity, which is a given identity? You have to establish your own identity.
I just say whatever I am, I'm not untouchable. I'm coming out and say, even I believe Tenmoli is preaching for that. People are ashamed. They can come out and say whatever they follow, they can say Dalit.
All I'm saying, Dhalaji, is I'm not even ashamed of myself, being whatever our history is. All I'm saying is we have to get out of that identity which connects us to the caste. And unless we do that, we will not be able to.
We cannot eradicate caste in India. As long as India exists, caste never can be eradicated. That's one of the truth. Only we can fight for our own caste thing, to be proud, to tell our people Dalit is not less than any other people. That's what we can do. Caste never be erased or eradicated.
Can I for a quick second? I don't know that you guys are the debate may not be the right framework, because I think actually you guys are saying something similar but from different perspectives. And part of it is that I think, when talking about what it is, the question of what it is to eradicate caste in ourselves is actually very complicated when you're Dalit. So for example, I only began to really interact with Ambedkar Dalits when I started this project, because from in the Tamil background and where I interacted with, there was not a lot of Ambedkar Dalits that I knew here in the U.S. So I started to meet them when I was doing work in India. And one thing that, for Christian Dalits, what happens is that the Christian missionaries recognize that, okay, for Dalits to leave that caste system, they have to replace all the festivals, because the Hindu festivals are what bind you to the community. They are your traditions, right? So they had to replace all of those things quickly with like Christian things. But Ambedkarite Dalits, particularly in Maharashtra, all of the things that got replaced with Hindu festivals were with Ambedkarite festivals. And that was so awesome, because you had something that was like a different platform completely. For Christian Dalits, it's all Jesus-based things, right? And I guess I'm bringing this up because I think that the limitations of only knowing each other in our faith practices means that we don't even know of each other across those faith lines. And so, my feeling is we should go all the way, like Vinaya is saying, and also the way that you're saying, Balaji, is that what if we were to create like a calendar, like April next year, if that's Dalit History Month, and every single day we had like a really amazing historical moment of Dalits doing this, Dalits like doing that, Dalits doing that, then we have a feeling of our own power and who we can connect to in a stronger way than just this small piece. Like, because for me, having grown up as a Dalit Christian, I'm not a Dalit Christian. I actually am an atheist, and now I'm a Buddhist. But I had to come to that journey on a very personal level, and that was something that was, because I found limitations in that model, and I don't believe in like an anthropomorphic God. Like, I think it's ludicrous. But it was such the solve for my people, because it was better than that to be seen as like lower than dirt, So I'm just wondering if what it is that we start to think about what are the technological and cultural structures that can be open source and engaged with by multiple Dalits in multiple spheres, that we can start crowdsourcing our history and crowdsourcing our events, so that we have a sense of how we can move forward from our multiple places.
Okay. Very interesting discussion going on. We are already past our timelines, what we have, but we can stretch a bit, being like the discussion what is going on around this topic. So Vinaya, Mr. Dala, if there are any closing remarks, please do that. Otherwise, we can move to the next question and continue. We need to have such discussions. We need to highlight our perspectives because that's what will bring us to form a consensus amongst ourselves in long run. Otherwise, Pankaj, please go ahead with your next question.
Yeah, I had one thing I wanted to make a comment and kind of a general remarks too. So if we analyze Dr. Baba Saheb's movement, his first structure or the first method he used was to free the man from the shackles of being untouchable. I'm not saying caste system because I am in the I'm leaning towards it that our goal should not be to eradicate caste system. It should be to free the man and show him a path. And I'm sure, like what Tenimozi said, she on her personal level came from Christianity into atheism, into Buddhism, and everybody is going to take a different approach and path and feel comfortable at a different level. But that may be a longer term goal, right? We don't have a strong Buddhism to support these ideas, this ideology or anything in there, but we can't wait that long to free this man from clutches of this one. So if it's free and he goes into, say, Islam, or he goes into Christianity, or he goes into somewhere else, that should be fine by us. I don't really, as a group, we shouldn't really look into in that way. But the other question to Vinaya's point was the caste systems only exist into like the Hinduism fold. They have caste system in Islam. If you look at Dalit Muslims, they have caste system there. If you look into Dalit Christians, they have caste systems there too.
Everybody
so
has
basically all these people who came from untouchability, they were happened to change their religion with some support, but in their minds, their caste stuck with them. And all we have to tell is that free the man out of his immediate burden first, like the ones that Baba Sahib used to talk about. Like the first thing he did as a major thing was he said, okay, let's fight for your rights first. Let's establish what your rights are, right? He fight for water. That's the major thing. He didn't fight first for the entry into the temple. He didn't do that. He said first water. I mean, first fill my basic necessity, and then he started attacking the very major problem was burning the Manusmriti. That was an ideological masterstroke that he could have played, I think. He just said like, okay, whatever is this rule book you are following, done, burned it. Right? But at that time he didn't introduce Buddhism. And he didn't even introduce Buddhism till like very 1956. But if you look at what he was practicing himself, he was Buddhist himself by very early 45s and things like that. So I think getting into the practice of saying non-religious movement, that makes more sense. We have to think like, okay, you are an oppressed community and your operation starts because you are this. Free yourself from here, go wherever you wanted to go. I think if we believe in Buddhism very strongly, ultimately any wise man will reach the same point. There is no other goal.
Okay, great, Pankaj. Any comments? Any comments to Pankaj point? Points what Pankaj has made?
No, if I'm allowed, I may make one more point in addition to Pankaj.
Sure. There are a couple more participants who want to ask questions. So, okay, let's go ahead, Dalaji, quickly.
See, this Dalitatvam, Dalit means even our people, those who are elite, I mean, their fathers are educated, their fathers are job oriented, then they got all the privileges being in a town and all. They treat our people, uneducated people, illiterate people, as separate. That's also Dalitatvam. Dalitatvam means anyone who takes advantage of over other people. It may be his own family member, his own community, his own caste. That is the Dalit Tattvam, the excellently defined. Like Katti Padmarao and Kancha Ilaya, they say that any party, even our community, those who are elite, their fathers are well-educated doctors, their son is a Dalit, they talk about Dalit, but they treat other people, the first generation or uneducated people, as a untouchable. That's also Dalit Tattvam. So we should pitch for that, not only Hindu. It's not that. Even Pankaj rightly said, Baba Sahib Ambedkar was still 40s, he was fighting for the basic things, not for a religious thing. So what I'm trying to say, we should respect all the people. Then it's like a big bouquet. We are all different flowers in a bouquet. You know, we cannot say that there are different colored flowers. It's not a bouquet. No, a flower bunch is consisting of different colors of flower. That's what we are. Thank you.
Were there folks that had other questions about the presentation too?
This is Nilesh. That was nice presentation and was a nice discussion. And yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. If someone asks me what is your name, I should not hide my name as say Nilesh. If I talk to American people, I should not represent myself as a Sam. I am Nilesh, and I should be proud of my identity. I am Dalit. I should be proud, and I should make everyone proud, and I should make that word that is so popular and with such a greatness that it should be pronounced with very proud, and that's my intention. So we are Dalit, and we are fighting for human rights and equality. That's the point, no matter which way.
No, I agree, Nilesh. Like, I feel like that's part of what we need to promote is this sense of love and this sense of dignity with our identity. But I think this pain from passing is very complicated and connected to lots of different policies back at home. So, for example, one big leader on the West Coast is Benjamin Kaila. I think some of you guys know him, and he runs like an Ambedkarite scholarship. But for example, you know, my dad and him both grew up as Dalit Christians, and what was really interesting is that for my dad's family, and to give you a context, like my dad now is almost 70, and his dad worked in the railway stations, and he made like 100 rupees a month. So you can imagine this father was making 100 rupees a month, and you know, they had 5, 6 children. And my dad's brother made a decision for the rest of the children in the family that at the time of independence that the children all needed to get education, and so they registered as Hindu even though they were raised as Christian. So what that required is that they had to hide in order to get college scholarships. And so even though my dad's name is Savalai Palayam Simpson Soundarajan. Savalai Palayam is the name of our cherry, so he was named after the Dalit cherry, so that's one big caste indicator. And Simpson was the Christian name that he was given, which was his father's last name from the missionary. So those two things had to be hidden in order for them to get reservation, and they did. So my dad changed his name to T.S.S. Rajan, and that name change continued all the way up through his time here in the U.S. And many Dalits who grew up in that environment made a choice. Some made a choice, some didn't make a choice, and that's also like another painful, historical thing. But that passing and hiding had to do with the fact that the reservation policies in India punitively targeted people who converted as a way to limit the structural change that needed to happen to equalize the balance. So it's not just about having pride as being Dalit, it's about also recognizing many people had to hide in order to come out and come forward. And you know, in my dad's case, I don't know if this is the case in other states, but in Tamil Nadu, they had a Department of Partisan Affairs, and they would investigate different students. So even if you were Dalit, you weren't safe in school once you got in, they would follow up with your family, they would go to your cherry, they would do evidence collection to see if in fact you were Hindu. If they're doing this much policy to do that, how difficult must it be to say, oh, I'm Dalit and I'm not Hindu, I'm Dalit and I'm something else? that's I think the core of why we have to set and expose these policies, but also in exposing, talk about what we've survived.
Even still exists that the Indian constitution doesn't change. Even everybody, like 80% are Christian now once they change the law. But to get that reservation, still people on the certificate they say Hindu.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Sunil Gautam. I have a question. I heard what Dala said and other person said. Question is like this. Okay, let me tell you. I was Hindu till last 3 years, and then I moved to Buddhism. And thing is like this. When we want to say proudly we are so and so caste, what I want to tell you is you are putting like all is well in telling in US, but back in India, once you tell out your caste, they will victimize you. They will treat you badly, and in the name of caste itself, they are giving the bad treatment to all villages. They are doing all kind of injustice. So, and one more thing of the caste system impact outcome is, as long as we are Hindu soul on the different castes, we cannot unite because caste-based egos will come into picture, which will not allow us to unite, and that is a blessing for Hindus to keep us apart. So definitely, like we have to come out of that caste-based fold or Hinduism fold to other platforms, where I would definitely say another platform. In my case, I take Buddhism, which tells you clearly like how you are supposed to be and what concepts will make you a pure person, strong human being, all those things. But yes, as you said, sorry, the other speakers name I don't know, but because of like caste-based thing, reservations implemented, they are trying to implement strongly by taking the caste, all those things. But their whole intention is not to people move away from the Hinduism, at the same time treat them very badly and give them, and in the meanwhile, in different means, they are trying to take out the reservation. So if you see that in the long term, it is going to harm us basically. By being a Hindu, you cannot say I am proud of so caste, because that brings into caste-based egoism among us, which is detrimental to our unity. So these are the things I want to put forward to Dala.
No. Even in Maharashtra I lived in, as soon as you say Buddhist, they say you are a Dalit. They know people make fun. Even Tamil Nadu or South in Andhra Pradesh, as soon as you say Christian, they say you are a Dalit. They know already.
Yeah, I agree with you. But at the same time, we have to change internally ourselves. We have to reprogram yourself that I am not a Hindu. I am not a okay, let them say. But I will not accept. That should be a strong determination of yours, which can be given Buddhism. Buddhism tells you, see, unless you believe these things, unless you do these things, don't believe anything without proof, without things. And people say like that, don't allow your brain or heart to accept it. So that's what you have to be. Yes, they will continue to say. But if you bring out your children on Buddhist platform, they will grow stronger. Otherwise, they will undergo inferiority complex. Lot of things will come out, go on. And there is a lot of disunity develops among ourselves. You can see the current scenario where we have lot of splinter groups. We never come together in the name of subcaste or other caste or egos, regional egos, whatever. So this is what is destroying us, not making us to become stronger.
Okay. Thanks, Sunil ji.
Can't we be as a Dalit?
Hello.
Without any religion.
Yeah, I want to say, I mean, let's not discuss anymore on this. So as Gautam ji said, so if back in India, if people tell their caste as a low caste, then people misbehave with them, right? And this is exactly what why we are here together, and this is what we want to change. People should not have those kind of things. People will not suffer any atrocities, even if they tell their identities. And yes, why should they hide their identity? And we want to change that system. That is why we are here. They should proudly tell whatever they are, and they should have equal rights, human rights. And that's exactly why we are here. That's what we are trying to do, sir.
Yeah, but
Okay, guys, let's move on to like we are already close to noon now. It's a long time we are on the session. And thanks, Dalaji, Sunil, Nilesh, Vinaya, for bringing up all those interesting points to talk. We'll continue on that. I want to go back to we do have 5 more minutes, and I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things on the presentation, what we had today, and if there are any follow-up questions, we can take that. First, I just want to ask permission from Chenmori that can we share these slides to our participants or
Yes,
the forum?
definitely.
Okay.
Should I just make the link available to you? I think I already sent it to you.
I already have that. I just want to. And are there any references to whatever the points you highlighted, like the first reference in the US text and about the car?
What I need to do, like this is a shorthand for my spoken presentation, but I think the next step of what I need to do is create a presenter's workbook with this that has the talking points and the references. I don't know if I'll get to that before I leave to India, but my goal is basically by next April is to have this be available for anyone to use with the speaker's handbook. So I will be working on that, and if there's other people from ANA that want to work with me on it, they should just follow up with me offline, and I will definitely make that available.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Other thing is, you and a lot of teams like Asha and other members, you guys are connected to global forums, United forums and all that. And there are a lot of things and activities which keep going on, some networking, lobbying and all that. And if there are any opportunities where people on this forum or forums like these can get connected, then I just want to request you, please do include us, and if we can be of any help, I think that will be great.
Well, I think I can think of 3 distinct opportunities in which we can work together. So I think one, the Dalit Women's Self-Respect Yatra is running again this fall, and I'll be leaving in about 3 weeks to go do communications work with them and film it for the larger film that we're collaborating on. And so during that time, what's very important is that we push the content that's coming out from that work to as many of our networks as possible. And the main organizing framework that we're using to do that is the hashtag Dalit Women Fight. So during that time, and I can let you guys know through the email that I have for you guys when you're in fact going to be sharing that stuff, is that it'll be both on Instagram as well as on Facebook and on Twitter. So beforehand, if you guys aren't active on those forums, if you guys can get connected and linked in, it's a place where we can really start to mobilize and show masses. And particularly because ANA is so international, the more hits and links and connections we have from international sites, the higher that it'll rank in the Google search. And those analytics are really important because generally the way that the cycle of the yatra goes is we run the yatra in India for 2 or 3 months and then to do international advocacy afterwards based on the findings of the yatra. So my sense is that we'll be marching and working and protesting through October and November, and then in February and March of next year is when we will start the international advocacy work. So I think just keeping plugged in through the hashtag, and I will try and do a monthly email update to you guys. I think that that's one definite way we could really have that process and have you guys firmly connected to the advocacy happening around caste-based sexual violence. Another good resource for that is following the updates of the International Dalit Solidarity Network. They will also have updates related to international advocacy, and they're a good newsletter to follow. If you aren't already following them, I would definitely do that. Thirdly, I would really like to work with ANA on both the survey and Dalit History Month for next year. because I think the survey is going to be really useful, and I think we will all be surprised at how big the Dalit community is, and also the stories that come out of our experiences, because just as we had in these small conversations, there's an incredible amount of diversity and intellectualism and power. And it's really time that we get to know who we are so that we can start fighting for the India that we want. And so I would really like to work with Anna in terms of the question drafts, as well as finally disseminating the survey, because I think it will be historic, because no academic or governmental institution has done a survey of our people. And so if we don't take that priority on, nobody else will. So I think that's the second opportunity I was thinking about. And then thirdly, I think if we can mobilize for April as Dalit History Month, anybody that has historical moments that are very poignant to them around Dalit history, both in terms of painful as well as like inspirational, I think that this is the moment to start gathering, because then we can be ready to launch, and every day in April share some piece of our legacy.
Okay. Thanks for all the references, resources, and how we are going to get connected. I just want to request you that if you haven't, then please to join the ANA group. You can send out an email, or we already have your email though, and also on the anausa.org you can get connected from there, so that you are also aware of as what's going on and on regular basis. Anyway, it's almost noon. Any final questions, any final comments anyone has? I'm sharing your email ID, by the way, so that people can get connected with you. Your Facebook name tag is also Dalit Diva, right?
That's correct. And you can find my work at my blog, dalitnation.com. And I'm very active on both Facebook and Twitter, so you can definitely friend me.
Before closing, I don't want to let you go before asking the question why you yourself call Dalit Diva.
Well, you know, because for me, I felt like, you know, I found being connected to Dalit identity a place that was very powerful. One, because I was looking for a term that expressed like my community's experience, and Dalit, when I heard the word, I didn't actually, it spoke so much truth to me, because in fact there is so much pain from this experience of caste, and it has broken us. But I think that the resilience and the fight to survive and the fight to thrive, that is what is inherently Dalit. And I found that so motivating. And I thought about like how to flip it from like a hip hop context, that thing about being a survivor, there's a lot of swagger to it, you know, there's a lot of pride to it. So that's why I put Dalit Diva to it. And what's really interesting is, because of that email, I get a lot of hate mail, I get a lot of threats, and I get a lot of insults, but I also get a lot of encouragement and pride, because it's, you know, yes, we have such a level of dignity to have survived this experience. It's something worth being proud about. So that's where it came from.
Great. So you also get some threats. Any final comments, guys? Otherwise, we can wind up this session. Thanks. Like, I'll give a minute or two if anyone has any comments.
I just want to make one dialogue. My name is Dalit, and I am not untouchable.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anyone? Any other comments, guys? Okay. I want to thank you, Tanmari, for joining. I know it took a while for us to get on the schedule, but it was a very fruitful, good session. Good points you highlighted, and we will in touch, and we would like to have you a forum in future as well. So thanks for joining, and thanks everyone for all the good fruitful discussion we had. We need to have that, and we'll continue on it. So, Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya. Have a good week ahead. We look forward to see you next week, guys.
Okay, bye. Take care.
Bye.